discount having those real efficiencies involved in the last 6 days. Queensbridge housing with the combination of the K-Bays groups who we're doing. Hi, I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and I am here to stand with members of the community that have been talking about this issue for far so long, of the overproliferation of guns in our community and the violence that we're seeing coming from the far too easy way to get access to a gun. And I just want to thank those who have partnered with us throughout the years, particularly the crisis management team. A.T. Mitchell and I, who I've known for over 35 years, has made a major impact on dealing with the issue of violence on the ground. We also have with us the tenant leaders and elected officials. Latrice Walker, who represent Brownsville from the time that she has been elected, was dealing with how do we really prevent some of these crimes and get services to the residents of the area, as well as Councilmember Diaz, the Council Member Adrian Adams, who's the chair of the Public Safety Committee and one of the major crisis management team members out in Queens, Kay Bain, who's doing an amazing job in Queensbridge, and also the council the council presidents who are here also standing with us, and we want to really acknowledge them because they are doing so much on the ground, calling for the services that are needed. And we will have Miss Evelyn Freeman, who represents Fiorentino Plaza Tenant Association. When you look at the crime that we're seeing, a large number of these cases involve around NYCHA facilities. In the last 6 days, at least 3 young people have been shot in the vicinity of NYCHA. Even as I walked in, a young lady handed me photos of what is happening in her apartment. And so we saw a 22-year-old man was fatally shot Sunday morning in the lobby of Albany Houses. A 16-year-old girl was shot in the head Friday outside of Buan's houses. She was just outside playing and hit and struck by a stray bullet. And last week, young Pennington, a 16-year-old boy, was fatally shot right here outside of these houses here in Brooklyn. So you're seeing these shootings are taking place across our entire city. That's why we have representatives not only from Brooklyn but from Queens as well. And these are not the only victims that are falling due to the gun violence. And we are clear that there is a major problem that is not only connected to the byproduct of the violence, but it is the betrayal of NYCHA. NYCHA is leading in the level of children who are not meeting proficiency, the level of children who don't have access to technology, the level of children who don't have access to a safe haven, such as the community centers within NYCHA development. Just a continuation of the denial of NYCHA, and the shootings are a byproduct of those continuation. And so a recent report that showed 21 children have been killed by street violence this year, more than triple the amount from 2020 and 2019. And so we're not surprised it's coming from NYCHA, and many of those shooters are around NYCHA, in the vicinity of NYCHA, or residents of NYCHA, because there has been a real abandoned philosophy and concept. We have abandoned NYCHA in a very real way. And so it's not just gun violence, there's also COVID. When you look at the numbers, although NYCHA residents make up 4% of the population of the city, 7% of the total deaths from COVID between March 2020 and June 2021 came from NYCHA. And it's just a continuous narrative that we're hearing. City, state, and federal government, they have basically neglected NYCHA, and we say it's enough to stop. And that neglect is just so apparent. Just look at the scaffolding. This scaffolding has been here for over 5 years.
Yes.
5 years. And it's not only a visual problem, but people commit crimes and they hide on top of the scaffolding. They drop garbage here. You don't have your sunlight. It just creates this energy that we are not in control of public housing, and we have left public housing behind. And so what we're saying today is not just broken windows. No, it's broken pipes. It's broken doors.
Yes.
It's broken walls. It is mold.
Yes.
It is a broken system. NYCHA has failed, and the management is an embarrassment to the people who live in public housing throughout our entire city, and we're saying enough is enough. And we have to stop the neglect in a real way. And so, dealing specifically with the guns, we must go to the root causes. I've said this over and over on the campaign trail. It's about intervention and prevention. The prevention are the long-term things that we are going to partner to accomplish to make sure we can stop the flow of violence. But there's some things we must do right now, and those are the intervention. And so we have to build a joint guns and gangs task force to coordinate local, state, and city and federal agencies together to stop the flow of guns. There's a small number of gun dealers that are providing the guns to the northern states and other parts of this country. Now we have a new introduction of ghost guns. That is just going to aggravate this problem even more. Senator Schumer was right. The federal government must step in and stop the flow of ghost guns. You cannot create an environment where you can order parts of the gun on the internet, assemble those guns, and destroy the communities that we're living in. We must invest in precision policing. We have to have precision policing that specifically target those that we know are known shooters and go after these individuals and ensure that we provide proper law enforcement responses to this large influx of guns and violence in our community. And I am going to continue to say that we have to have an adequate, well-trained conflict resolution, plainclothes anti-gun unit that specifically zero in on gun violence, not the cowboys of the past where anyone is just going out, stopping and frisking everyone in a community. No. Using the combination of precision policing and intelligence, we can specifically take down the gangs, like which was successful in Queensbridge houses with the combination with what K Baines groups were doing and what the DA cats were able to do to take down violent gangs. We saw an unprecedented decrease in gun violence in that community, and it's a successful partnership that we must continue to build. And we have to stop the illegal guns from flowing into our community. We don't have a gun manufacturing plant in Brownsville, in East New York, South Jamaica, Queens, and the South Bronx. These guns must stop coming into our city. And finally, push the federal government for more proactive investment in NYCHA. The overall capital needs of NYCHA have been predicted to be $40 billion. We don't want those dollars coming into our city and falling into the black NYCHA hole and disappearing, never getting anything done. That is unacceptable. We want to reintroduce our call for a NYCHA stat so we can look at every dollar that comes in, where is it going, what's the timeline to repair the things that we need to get NYCHA up and operating. And so the city-state must partner with private sector and the federal government to provide the infrastructure need. And that's why we commend President Biden and call on our federal lawmakers to pass the federal infrastructure bill to finally get NYCHA the money that they need to get public housing back on its proper footing. So disinvestment leads to disrepair, and it leads to the disorder, and it produces the violence that we are seeing. We cannot continue to hear night after night, weekend after weekend, young people being shot in this manner. And I just can't help it. I say this, and we have to be clear. If any other ethnic group was losing this number of young people, we will not be so lax in the response of this. 21 young people in this city we have lost in a short period of time to gun violence. We have one young person that was arrested repeatedly for carrying a gun, later to be shot and killed. What was the intervention to find out why is he still carrying a gun? This is what this is about. We must stop the flow of this violence, and I thank those who are here who have been talking about it. These are residents of the community and those who have been on the front line of stopping this violence in our city. So I want to bring on, who has been a real partner and a voice around this issue, my good friend A.T. Mitchell from Man Up Incorporation, and then Ms. Freeman, the Tenant Association President. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Brother A.T. Mitchell, the proud founder and executive director for a community-based organization called Man Up Incorporated. I stand alongside some of my men and women who are part of my team. I also wear the hat in this particular area as the chairperson of Community Board 5. And so I'm proud to be the chair of the Community Board for the last 7 years as well. So, as mentioned by our Borough President, who has been a longstanding partner of our work in community, in the work that we do in the community as well as in our community board, especially in our district where we're unfortunate. We oftentimes lead in the top 3-5 categories of the violent crimes that are reported in New York City, here in the 75th precinct, the largest precinct in the city of New York. And so we unfortunately, we get more than our fair share of the violence. I also want to say thank you to the tenant leaders that are present for the beautiful community here of Fiorentino Plaza, AKA Picking Projects, for allowing us to come into your space to be able to shed light. This is an effort that cannot be done and won without the community at the forefront. And so I'm very big on community-led, driven approaches to public safety. And so as a co-architect of the crisis management system, I'm also proud to stand alongside my colleagues, Dr. Devon Pryor, as well as Brother Kay Bain, and the elected officials of this community as well, Councilmember Diaz, Assemblywoman Walker, and Councilwoman Adams. I really appreciate their partnership in this fight. This is unfortunate that we have to stand here again and shed light on an issue. And unfortunately, it seems like it only takes when someone dies for us to get the attention, and it shouldn't be the case. We do a lot of work trying to get in front of these situations before they happen, and it's been proven to be effective. We actually are one of the first community-based organizations that enrolled the model called Cure Violence into New York City, and we have been doing now that for over 10 years. And our organization data and the statistics prove it stands for itself. There is a public health approach to public safety. Violence is a disease, and no one of us standing around is immune to it, and nor are we safe. It can reap any one of us. Unfortunately, any one of us can be affected by it, and it can unfortunately take any one of us out, as seen demonstrated. And my condolences to all the families of the victims of violence lately here in New York City. This entire year has been very rough for those of us that work this work over time. So my condolences to all the families. We are working tirelessly to try to prevent another shooting and a killing from happening. Let me also say in that vein, the work that we do in the crisis management system and the Cure Violence Global model is funded by this administration, respectfully. And this administration has poured more money into our effort than any other mayor in the history of the city of New York. But although we've been given some funding, I have to be consistent. We haven't received enough funding. Okay, let me be clear. The funding that we have received only allows us to be boots on the ground for just 8 hours out of an entire day. There are 24 hours in a day, And so any given 8 hours is when you're going to see this band of men and women that you see alongside me. The other 16 hours out of the day, unfortunately, the funding doesn't allow us to be here. So we are very excited about a new administration coming in with a mayor who is going to even be more understanding and more supportive, because this is a mayor who's always been with us, and we are excited about the opportunity to expand on the successes of our model, and hopefully we'll be able to expand into having our boots on the ground 8, 16, and hopefully eventually 24 hours a day, where men and women that are credible from the community are on post in their neighborhoods where they grew up at, the people that they know well, and provide a community's presence that will also be a deterrent to violent crime. And as the Borough President mentioned, the precision policing, well, in our model, we have something called precision resourcing. Precision resourcing. The same people who are more likely to commit the violent act, our idea is let's provide resources for them before they commit another crime. We don't want only to be targeted by the police. We don't only want to be arrested and incarcerated by the police, but we want to be funded and supported by this city. Those men and women we work with every day, the overwhelming majority of them are good, forsaken, mostly young people who have made poor and bad decisions. But outside of that, they will tell you themselves, they do have a voice, they know how to speak well. There are not a lot of opportunities out here for them or anything else for them to do. And so jail should not be their only option. So alongside of precision policing, I would like to offer precision resourcing for that same population. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brother Mitchell. And also we want to bring on Ms. Freeman, the Sergeant at Arms. Sergeant at Arms. You oh, what?
I apologize. Go ahead. Want to stand up? Want to stand alongside him?
Yes.
Right here.
Okay.
It's all good.
I'm Evelyn Freeman, Sergeant of Arms, and this is our president.
My name is Jacqueline Peller. I'm the president of Fiorentino Plaza. Okay.
Yes.
We are here today to represent Fiorentino Plaza. Unfortunately, with the young the young man that passed away, our condolences go out to his family. And it's very sad that the young kids are dying so rapidly. We need people like the Man Up group to support us and help us around here to get the kids to do other activities so they don't have to worry about guns. And it's sad because we live here.
Yes.
Even with the scaffolding, we live here. We scared too.
Yes.
We scared to walk through here. I leave at 4:30 in the morning. It's scary. I'm a single mom. Only thing I have is the mace, and I made some, I'm going to jail.
Yes.
So we need people to help us. It's nothing wrong with living in housing. It's just the people. And a lot of times it's the people, friends coming from outside, destroying the housing that we live.
Yes.
It's nothing wrong with it. People said the project, there's nothing wrong with living in, I call it development. Because you got families, you got kids. We want to live.
Yes.
We want to be happy. Some of us, like me, pay good rent. So we want to live good, just like our neighbors. I'm the president. I'm here. I didn't want to be here. I have to be here to support my people. We need help with NYCHA too.
Yes.
We need help. And Eric Adams, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming out here to see about Fiorentino, because sometimes we feel like we lost.
Yes.
So we need the help. Money got to go to NYCHA, but it got to go to the right people to fix the building so we could be secure. My baby, I've been living here 13 years. My baby, he's 14, but guess what? He never played outside. Me, never sat on the bench. never touched the fence, but I live here. So we want to be at peace. I came from housing too. But guess what? It's what the projects wasn't in me. You got good working people. Good working people that live here. Don't look down because we in the poor projects. We work every day. Never been on welfare, never had a food stamp, even though I want it. But guess what? I can't get it. So don't look at the building. You got good working people. So act like we somebody and do something. I think I talk too much. God bless.
Well said. Well said. Well said. And no one has really personified the power of the people in public housing more than our Assemblywoman, Latrice Walker.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Borough President, Mr. Mayor-elect.
Yes.
Right, this is a new day in our city, and yes, you know, it's easy to fight for public housing when you're a project kid. And as Madam President said, there are amazing people who live in the New York City Housing Authority. I had the audacity to think that while living in Glenmore houses, also on Pitkin Avenue, that I could go to law school, and did that, and drove from the projects to Pace Law School in White Plains each and every day, learning in criminal law classes about the conditions of my neighbors and myself as if we are an anomaly without them even understanding and recognizing that the subject matter that they discussed was sitting right amongst them. And so it is a proud moment to be able to stand here and sort of be in the middle of all of the three conversations and themes that I've heard. We don't have to compromise living in great conditions and public safety. We can do both at the same time. We can do precision policing and not compromise access to civil rights that we desire and we are entitled to by the Constitution of the state of New York. We can do them at the same time. And we don't have to compromise the fact that we have community resources that we need and public safety. We can provide those resources and still be safe and live in conditions that everyone is entitled to. Fair, just, suitable, livable housing. And so it's also worth me noting that while we in the New York State Legislature have done a lot of changes with respect to criminal justice reform, again, we don't have to compromise criminal justice reform and public safety. Those two things are not juxtaposed or mortal enemies of one another. They can coexist. We don't have to compromise stricter and stronger gun laws and saying that we need the resources to be directed to the most neediest communities. Those two things can happen at the same time. And if you don't believe me, on this day, this Tuesday, along Pitkin Avenue is one of the most amazing correlations and cooperation in a community proposal within the precinct, the 73rd precinct, where we have the Brownsville Safety Alliance. We demanded from our city that we got a police officer and who was in charge, who was culturally competent in our community, who knew the plight of our community, who was born and raised right here to be the person who is at the helm. And he is a person with dignity, with integrity, and he is a great police officer. And he has tied those talents with saying to the city and to different resources around our state and federal government that we have a void of resources here in our neighborhood, which correlates with the fact that people are being told to put down their gun, but they're not giving them anything to fulfill that empty space. And so he's providing those resources by working with community partners in order to say that enough is enough. And we know exactly what it is that we need. And then, of course, he partners with the Cure Violence organizations because, quite frankly, I don't know how folk haven't figured it out before. But it is, if you think that you can handle this situation with gun violence without the partnership of credible messengers and people who are on the ground. And this is science. It's not art. This is science. There is a Chicago model that worked, that talked about gun violence as a public safety initiative. This is a whole study. We're not just making this up. But there are so many of us who want to put all of the resources into the Boston model, which always deals only with our police department. But of course, we have a new administration that is coming in to say that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and that we can marry that Chicago model with that Boston model. We can marry cure violence with precision policing, with adequate resources, with a livable place to live and grow up and raise your family, and a community that is safe to be able to walk down the street with some dignity and some respect, not just for yourself, but also for your fellow neighbor. And today is a proud moment. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing us all together and keeping us all together, because we know that that's the only way that we're going to be able to eradicate gun violence in our communities. And again, my condolences go out to the family members who have lost someone, because we know that gun violence doesn't just attack the person who's shot down on the street, but it also affects an entire family and an entire community. And so again, thank you so much for taking this time. I am Assembly Member Latrice Walker.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. And so we're just going to bring on our Kay Bain, just to show how this is a citywide effort that we're talking about. The shootings are not only in Brooklyn, but throughout this entire city. Kay Bain.
Thank you, sir. I want to say good morning. I want to start by saying today is the greatest day in the history of days, because we're here. And in this moment, in this breath, we have an opportunity. I'm excited. I'm optimistic when I hear elected officials like the ones here talking about the intersectionality of the work that we ought to do. That means that people in leadership positions, the new administration that's coming in, understands that the people are the center for the change that is to come. So we can't have a conversation about where we're going in the future if we don't have the input, the buy-in, and the leadership of those of us on the ground in the community. When we talk about violence as a public health issue, not too long ago, this was a revolutionary and radical concept. What do you mean we should treat people who are violent like human beings? What are you talking about? We should demonize, we should incarcerate. This is the only way. Well, this country spends $87 billion a year putting people in cages, and it has not worked. Over $212 billion when you add lawyers, judges, and court costs to that number, and it has not worked. 2.4 million people currently incarcerated in this country, 11.4 million people in and out of on an annual basis, and it has not worked. But let me tell you what has worked. Something called human justice. And human justice, as opposed to criminal justice, puts the people first. It means that we see the humanity in those who perpetuate violence. What? What did you say? It means that hurt people, and it hurts. So even the person who gets the firearm, and our future mayor, soon-to-be mayor, established there's a route, there's an economy that's allowing firearms into the hands. We're in communities where you can't get organic anything, where you can't get a number 2 pencil or a laptop computer in a school, but you can get a Mac 10, a Uzi, a Tech 9, a 9mm, a Glock Beretta. So something is happening. Something is happening when you got 400,000 of working class, hard-working people inside the NYCHA developments, and we can't get scaffolding fixed for 5 years. What do we have money for? I learned at my time in the city council that if you want to know where a legislator or society for that matter's priority is, look at the money. Look at the numbers. We have a $100 billion budget in the city of New York. Where is it going? Something else I learned on my journey was how you treat the most marginalized, how you treat the most vulnerable, says a lot about you as a society, says a lot about you as a country, says a lot about you as a city. And this work that we do is citywide work, it's statewide work, it's national work, because guess what? The same human needs that are not being met in this housing development are not being met in housing developments around this city. It is the same. People don't feel safe. People don't feel secure. People don't feel significant. People don't feel seen. People don't feel heard. Again, today being the greatest day in the history of days reminds me that we have leadership that is listening, leadership that is not having us just sit at the table, but just like around 2009 or 10, when myself, A.T. Mitchell, and a few others brought a model to New York City called Cure Violence, then enhanced it and turned it into something that New York could use like no other city in the world, we are at a new intersection where we will begin this human justice work on an entirely new level. I'm looking forward to the future. I have to end by saying our condolences to the families, the friends, the loved ones, and those 21 children that have been lost. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. Well said, brother. Thank you. Thank you. We just want to round it out with our council members who are here, particularly the public safety chair, who has been in this space for a long time, Councilwoman Adrian Adams.
Thank you, Borough President. Good morning, everyone. I hail from Southeast Queens District 28, and my heart is heavy this morning, as it is in any situation where we come together to commemorate the death of a child. Cahlil Pennington, a baby, gunned down before his life even began, really. Amir Griffin, Baisley houses my district, 16 years old, a baby. I will never forget that night, running on a rainy night through the playground at Baisley houses after I was told that a child was shot down playing basketball, a child from Cardoza High School, a child whose future could have been in basketball, what he loved to do the most. And here we were in the rain. NYPD, Baisley houses residents, myself, Erica Ford from Life Camp, all of us crying because the life of a child had been taken in the night before his life could even begin. That was 2 years ago. And as I fight tears this morning as a mother and a grandmother of babies who deserve to live, I stand here frustrated. I stand here as a mother of a daughter and children who live in public housing on the Rockaways. I stand here frustrated at the notion that today, more of our babies will be shot down in the street before they have a chance to live. I stand here frustrated as a black mother, as a black grandmother, who brought life into this world, only to see the lives of children being taken away in the year 2021. Where is our humanity? We have lost it. Once again, we draw back to the systemic racism that poisons this community, that poisons this country, that poisons New York City. There's no way around it. There's no other explanation around it. When we take a look at the haves and the have-nots, there is no reason for scaffolding to still be on this building 5 years later. We are the haves in this city. We contribute to the wealth and growth of this city. We contribute to the arts. We contribute to education. We contribute to health. These are essential workers. These are black and brown people who deserve our respect and our resources. I'm tired today. And I feel the spirit of Mother Fannie Lou Hamer today.
All right now.
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So yes, we've got a brand new administration coming in who's going to release these resources, who understands the plight of our communities, and who is sick and tired of being sick and tired himself. We are going to see a brand new day where these mothers don't have to cry anymore over the lives of their children, where we don't have to have press conferences to commemorate the lives of young Cahlil Penningtons across the city of New York. To this administration that I continue to work with, I ask you, where is my community center at Baisley Houses that was promised to me 2 years ago when Amir died? Where is my community center? The residents hold me responsible for delivering that service to them. I hold this administration responsible for not delivering the resources that were promised to my constituents, that were promised to Latrice's constituents, that were promised to Dharma's constituents, that were promised to Eric's constituents, that were promised to the people of the city of New York who live in NYCHA houses, who work hard for this city. We want and we demand our resources, for promises to be met, for the purse strings to be loosened even deeper, for our crisis management system, our workers, our violence interrupters that know this city and know these communities better than anyone else, who walk these streets and can only walk them and help us for 8 hours? That's ridiculous. Crime goes on beyond. It goes on a daily. It goes on an hourly. It goes on 24/7 in our communities. We need these resources to be released for our crisis management system workers. I'm going to continue to do what I have to do. I'm going to do my part. Administration, you need to step up and do more of your part. My name is Councilmember Adrian Adams. I am from Southeast Queens, a resident of Jamaica for 32 years, who raised a family within walking distance of where bullets flew 2 days ago by a school that I can walk to that my children went to on 7:30 in the morning 3 days ago. The children were on their way to school, and this is what they walked into. Tape in front of their building, sirens on the side of their buildings at PS 160. Yes, we had to call the principal. We had to talk to the principal, find out what trauma resources are available. There are none. There are none available at my school to take care of the traumatized educators, the teachers, the parents, the children that somehow are now thinking this is normal. This is not normal. This is dysfunctional and disgraceful. God help us. We need a new way. But I do believe in a new day. Because this man is going to be at the helm. I believe in him. We will all partner with him to support his work and support his vision for a new New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Public Safety Chair, and just our final speaker. And it's just so important to hear from folks who are here because, you know, when we have these shootings, and I want to say to all of you, our silence is condoling it. And if we're not silent by coming out like this, it is saying to our city that we are acknowledging what's happening, and you know we should continue have these responses. And so our final speaker is the Councilwoman Dora Diaz.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking my future mayor for preparing my toolbox. What I have here is an enormous amount of tools within you all. When I came into this council 10 months ago, I reached out to the mayor's office and I said, this is what I need. And the doors were shut down. Reached out to A.T. Mitchell. Mitchell, I need you. He was with me. We're going to go back to funding and the lack of it. Thank you again for choosing this location. We're on the negative of $50.8 million to bring you a sense of human rights. Housing is a human right, it's not a need. It's a human obligation. That's right. HPD, the NYCHA world federal government, is also lacking in their responsibility of they're doing to us. There's a federal commitment of an eight hours per individual monthly who's not working. 8 hours can mean an OSHA training, security training, back into school. Let's put the money back into our communities. Coming into 37 Councilmatic District, I've been living here for almost 30 years. I know what I walked into. I walked into lack of resources. It's not gonna get any better for us unless we move forward, and all of you who spoke here today, be part of that toolbox. Let's not live for the moment. 2021 is around the corner. Thank you for being part of my toolbox.
Thank you.
We're gonna do on topic first, and then for off topic, we'll let folks release, because I think they're gonna wanna ask a range of stuff, and we'll take off the seal. On topic first, Dave.
Eric, let me just ask you, I know there have been a lot of incidents, or a few incidents at least in the last week or so, but if you look at this summer, the mayor has said, you know, shootings are down 31% this summer. Murders went down 9%. It seems like that intervention that you're talking about may be working, but I don't know, maybe Adrian may have an opinion about that's just baloney, and statistics can say whatever you want.
Shootings were down, the deaths, etc. What has happened historically is that we have gauged the success of public safety citywide. But if you go into the crevices of the numbers, there are certain communities that have continued to have high crime numbers. And so, yes, it's safe to go to Lincoln Center. Less, it may be safe to go to Central Park. But when you dig into the crevices and you look at certain areas, they have yet to find the real issues. And that's where you have to go to another level of partnering with people who are on the ground. That's the new focus that we must do if we want to really start driving out this violence that we're seeing.
Steve?
Thanks. Eric, obviously NYCHA has an enormous backlog of maintenance issues. I believe the number was something like 20 billion. Where is that money going to come from? How do we see the city, state, and federal levels all partnering together here to erase that backlog?
Well, I really have to take my hat off to Richie Torres, Congressman Velasquez, and Senator Schumer. They have a real NYCHA plan that they are putting forward. We have abandoned NYCHA on the federal, state, and city level for years. People talked about that, you know, the cavalry was coming. Those bugles were not the cavalry, it was taps. NYCHA was dying. And so let's bring in those dollars. Let's pass this infrastructure bill. Let's pass this bill that's focusing on billions coming to NYCHA. But let's get rid of the current administration and management and put in place a real-time system that I call NYCHA Stats, where we can monitor the dollars that are coming in. How are we moving them forward? That is what we must do. And then we have to think differently. I'm a big believer that in there's certain locations where we can do infill building and allow the old tenants to go into the new buildings so they can downsize respectfully without downsizing and moving out of their community. Not market housing on NYCHA property, but housing for long-standing tenants to move into the new buildings, then renovate those old buildings up to proper living conditions and allow new families to move in. So we have to be creative, but let the voice of the tenants participate. But the money is there. Let's bring it to NYCHA and partner jobs with that those who live in NYCHA.
Is the money only there from the federal government? Is there anything the city and state can do here?
Yes, one of the ideas I just pointed to you, that we could utilize existing property in NYCHA to do the infill building, allow new tenants, the old tenants to move into the new buildings, and then retrofit the old buildings that are there. We should look at areas of also how do we get real dollars coming from the state level. If we don't get anything from the federal level, the state has an obligation, and the incoming administration needs to allocate a substantial amount of capital dollars to NYCHA. I believe we could have a real capital budget plan that must hire NYCHA residents to be part of the rebuilding of NYCHA. It can't come from outside our city. And I think a major capital improvement plan, allocating those dollars. Interest rates are low. This is the opportunity to do so, and there's no greater need than NYCHA.
Mr. Adams, there's been an assumption put out there that the passage of Raise the Age has led to some of the uptick in youth violence, and that perhaps there should be some consideration of changing the adult age of criminal responsibility back to 16. Do you believe that Raise the Age has contributed to this recent uptick, or is this coming from something else or something?
No, I don't agree with that. I believe there's so many studies that proved the 16-year-old child brain development. There's so much science behind what the advocates did in Albany around Raise the Age, and I think they did a commendable job. What we should be doing is raising the money to stop allowing children to believe they must be fed into a criminal lifestyle. We failed our children. I walked through Rikers 3.5 weeks ago, and I saw the number of children who were dyslexic, who had mental health illnesses. So the real crime is not only what happens on Pickens Avenue, it happens in the Department of Education every day. We are failing our children. If you don't educate, you will incarcerate. I've said this over and over again. And so people who want this instant fix of let's just raise the age and just incarcerate children, that's not going to solve the problem. That's a Band-Aid on a cancerous sore. We need to solve the underlying reason that crime is taking place in these communities historically. And I don't think that the knee-jerk reaction of saying that we were wrong for looking at the raise the age legislation, it was it was the right thing to do. Now let's do the other parts of that.
Emily?
Thank you for saying that.
The current administration doesn't have, NYCHA staff doesn't have a plainclothes anti-gun unit. Mayor Plaza is using position policing, he is using pure violence. Do you believe, like Brother Mitchell, that there should just be more of both of those things? Or how would you build on what's already on the way?
Yes, well, we have to change the ecosystem of public safety. We have never really engaged in a real conversation of what public safety looks like. We thought it was only police. And now we're showing that there's a new ecosystem. Many people miss what the Assemblywoman stated. We have a precinct commander who grew up in NYCHA and grew up in Brownsville, understands what it means to have his police officers know what is the expected behavior of being a person that is going to police a community with historical tensions between police and residents. They're not going to discount our clergy leaders. They're not going to discount our crisis management team. They're not going to discount having those real initiatives on the ground. That's the new form of policing that we should have. Historically, they hated our crisis management teams. They didn't allow them inside the precincts. They would not work with them. When they came on the scene, they did not interact with them. Our hospitals did not allow them to go to end retaliatory shootings. We had a city that was hostile to the people who are on the ground. Then they go out in the streets and tell people to put down the guns. They should be walking with job applications saying, here's a job that you can go apply for. How do I get you back in housing, in school? So there needs to be a holistic approach. And so we must increase the dollar amount, but also increase our expectation of how our city agencies are part of this overall plan. They're not part of the overall plan. They're disjointed. You go to your local high school and ask the local precinct commander, how often do you meet with him to find out what's happening in the area around the school? You'll find that they're not even talking to each other. Bad guys are coordinated and talking to each other. Good guys are being unaligned and not communicating with each other. That must change.
Do you support transferring NYCHA development to private management or the RAD program that the administration is pursuing?
I believe we've had some real wins with RAD. It must come with the community involvement and engagement. The tenant associations should come on the ground. There should be a clear presentation, clear expectation of what's to produce. And I said this during my time as voicing my vision for NYCHA. I think it's imperative that NYCHA has an attorney assigned to them that they interviewed and decided upon. These are complicated conversations, and I think it's unfair to go to tenant association leaders and say, navigate these policies that are coming down from the federal, state, and city level. Have someone with a fiduciary responsibility of your best interest to make sure that there are no displacement, that you're always going to have your apartment, and that you will not have some surprises after you make these contractual agreements. I think there's certain cases where RAD can be a win if the tenants also embrace it, but we need to understand that you can have that quality living condition. This is a fact that we all know. management of NYCHA has failed.
100%.
They have failed. And we can't get any worse than what we have right now.
Jack.
I was just going to follow up on the last question. I'm wondering, where do you stand on like selling air rights? Because a lot of people believe that money from the federal government is never really going to arrive in the amount that's necessary to fix the problem. So do you have a position, and do you think there should be new mixed income developments on some of these infill sites in the public housing?
First, air rights. I'm a supporter of it. Air rights are just that, air. It's not the building. We have all these air rights around us. What are we doing with it? And it's not like we're building on top of these buildings. We're selling the air rights. The Regional Planning Authority put out a proposal that we can get roughly $8 billion in selling the air rights. We have a great deal in Brooklyn, in Fort Greene houses, where we sold the air rights, Gowanus houses, where we sold the air rights, no, Fort Greene houses, Ingersoll, where we sold the air rights, and we were able to partner with the TA presidents. We were able to do some needed repairs on the ground, and I think it's a real win. And we get the TA presidents together to determine what they want to do with the dollars that are coming from the air rights. It's a quick infusion of money that we can do right now without selling our land and without selling our buildings, and I think it's a real win. I talked about that throughout the year, and I'm hoping that we examine that amazing report that came out from the RPA. And talking about private, no, we should have public housing should remain public in the area of any new development that's taking place. I think we need to continue to do that. We can't surrender the 400,000 residents in public housing. That's the anchor. And you saw, we witnessed gentrification throughout this entire city. You couldn't gentrify NYCHA, and we're not going to gentrify NYCHA.